My son overheard his future mother-in-law brand me a complete disaster in front of 200 wedding guests. And before I could even comprehend the humiliation burning across my face, he glanced at his bride, caught her laughing, and called off the wedding with 6 words that changed everything. "This wedding is over. Everyone leaves." The entire room fell into a crushing silence. I thought the worst moment of my life had already passed. I was wrong, because what my son did the next morning would shatter a family that had been smiling while hiding secrets behind their teeth for months. My name is Carl Fisher, and I was 59 years old on the day my son's wedding collapsed. If you had seen me that morning, you never would have guessed I was walking straight into a disaster. I had ironed my best shirt twice, polished my work boots until they looked presentable, and even trimmed my beard extra carefully. My only son Tyler was getting married, and that alone made every ache in my joints feel worthwhile. I'd been awake since 5 o'clock a brick, checking the gift envelope for the 3rd time, and loading my toolbox into the truck. Yeah, my toolbox. Tyler had asked me to bring it, because the hotel's cake table was unsteady, and he knew I could fix it in 5 minutes. That's what fathers do. We fix things. I spent 32 years in construction before my back forced me to retire at 57, and there wasn't much I couldn't handle with the right tools. The wedding was at the Grand Magnolia Hotel, one of those upscale places with marble floors so polished you could see your reflection. Not my kind of place, but Tyler's fiancée, Monica, had her heart set on it. Her mother, Beverly Grant, made sure of that. Beverly was the kind of woman who wore money like armor and wielded her smile like a weapon. She made it clear from the very beginning that my blue-collar background was an embarrassment to their family image. Let me tell you about Beverly Grant. She owned a high-end real estate business downtown and drove a BMW that cost more than I earned in 2 years. She had flawless hair, designer outfits, and an attitude that made you feel like you were dragging dirt in just by existing near her. From the moment Tyler brought Monica home for dinner, Beverly looked at my modest house like it was something contaminated. The first time she visited, she walked through my living room, the room where Ruth and I had raised Tyler, where we'd watched him take his first steps on the hardwood floor. I installed myself and said, "It's very authentic." The way she said it, you'd think authentic meant pathetic. But I kept quiet. That was my mistake. See, I learned early that silence keeps the peace, especially when you're dealing with people who have more money than manners. Ruth, my wife who passed away 4 years ago from cancer, always said I swallowed my pride too easily for the sake of family harmony. She was right about that, just like she was right about most things. The wedding planning had been months of quiet wounds. Beverly constantly suggested changes to everything I offered to contribute. When I volunteered to build a wooden arch for the ceremony, something I could have crafted beautifully in my backyard workshop, she hired a florist instead and told Tyler it would look more professional. When I offered to host the rehearsal dinner at my home, she reserved a restaurant that charged $150 a head and claimed it suited the guest list better. Every idea I brought up was politely brushed aside. Every tradition I wanted to honor was replaced with something more expensive. And through it all, Monica would give me those apologetic looks while still doing exactly what her mother wanted. The girl wasn't cruel, just weak. And weakness, I've learned, can be just as dangerous as cruelty when it allows bad things to happen. On the morning of the wedding, I arrived early to fix that cake table. The ballroom looked like something out of a magazine. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers hanging like frozen bursts of light, and enough candles to illuminate a small town. I found the unsteady table and had it stable in 10 minutes, with a few washers and adjustments to the legs. Simple fix, but it made me feel useful in a place where I clearly didn't belong. That's when I first overheard Beverly speaking to the wedding coordinator near the entrance. She didn't realize I was there, hidden behind the cake display, finishing my work with my head lowered like always. The groom's father, Beverly, was saying, her voice dripping with that artificial sweetness she used when she wanted something. He's not quite part of our social circle. We're just hoping he doesn't do anything too embarrassing during the photos. My hands froze around my tools. The wedding coordinator made a polite response, probably uncomfortable but unwilling to offend a paying client. Beverly continued, "Monica keeps insisting Tyler is devoted to him, but honestly, the man still lives in the same small house he built 25 years ago. No ambition, no refinement. At least after today, we can start reshaping Tyler's understanding of family priorities. I stood there gripping my wrench, feeling like I'd taken a blow straight to the stomach. This woman was speaking about me like I was a problem to manage, not the groom's father. The house Ruth and I built with our own hands, where we raised our son, where we paid every bill and fixed every leak. She called it small, like it was something shameful. But the worst part was what she said next, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. Glenn thinks I'm being too harsh, but you have to understand, Tyler inherited his father's sentimental streak. All those traditions, all that blue-collar loyalty. It's charming until it interferes with real success. We need to help him see the bigger picture. I packed my tools and walked out without saying a word, but something inside me had shifted. I began paying closer attention to everything. The way Beverly spoke, the way Monica behaved around her, the way conversations stopped the moment I entered a room. During the rehearsal dinner the night before, I watched Beverly work the crowd like a politician campaigning for votes. She introduced Tyler to her business associates, talked about expanding his future, and made sure everyone knew about his engineering degree and promising career. But whenever someone asked about his family, she'd give a tight smile and smoothly redirect the conversation. Monica seemed torn between loyalty to Tyler and fear of disappointing her mother. I saw it in how she'd start including me, then retreat the second Beverly gave her one of those looks. The girl wasn't born cruel, just raised by someone who was. Sometimes that's worse because they don't even realize they're doing wrong. Glenn, Beverly's husband, barely spoke above a whisper anymore. The poor man had been married to her for 30 years and looked like he'd stopped fighting long ago. He'd catch my eye across the table with an apologetic expression, like he wanted to speak but didn't have the strength. I understood that feeling more than I cared to admit. The ceremony began at 4:00 p.m. sharp. The ballroom filled with guests dressed in expensive suits and designer gowns that likely cost more than my monthly Social Security check. I sat in the front row on the groom's side, wearing my best shirt and tie, hands folded in my lap the way Ruth taught me in church. Tyler stood at the altar, nervous but happy, adjusting his collar the same way he used to adjust his Little League cap before a big game. That small habit tightened my chest with memories. Ruth should have been there. She would have cried tears of joy and told everyone nearby how proud she was of our son. Monica walked down the aisle in a dress that shimmered like starlight. She truly looked beautiful, I'll admit that. Glenn walked beside her looking like a man heading toward his own execution, but he still managed to smile for the cameras. The photographer kept snapping pictures of everything. The flowers, the rings, the guests, even me sitting there trying to look like I belonged. The officiant began speaking about love and commitment and building a life together. Traditional vows, classical music played by a string quartet that probably earned more per hour than I once made in a day. Everything looked flawless on the surface. But I'd worked construction long enough to know that the most beautiful exteriors often hide the deepest flaws. Then came the moment that changed everything. During the ring exchange, Monica's young niece, Nancy, the flower girl, maybe 6 years old, dropped her basket and began chasing the scattered rose petals across the marble floor. Children do unpredictable things at weddings. A few guests chuckled softly. The photographer crouched to capture her collecting the petals, likely thinking it would make a sweet, candid moment. I bent down to help her gather them, simply doing what you do when you see a child struggling. Nancy looked up at me with wide brown eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry, mister. I didn't mean to mess up." "You didn't mess up anything, sweetheart," I told her gently. "Flowers are meant to scatter. That's what makes them beautiful." She smiled and continued picking them up, while I handed her a few more. It should have meant nothing. Just an older man helping a child at a wedding. A simple, kind moment. That's when Beverly stood from her seat and snapped loudly enough for the entire ballroom to hear. "Can you not make this about yourself for 1 minute?" The silence that followed was instant and suffocating, like all the air had been pulled from the room. I froze with petals in my hand. Nancy stared at me, confused. The officiant stopped mid-sentence. The string quartet's music cut off abruptly. Every head turned toward us. Beverly pointed at me, her face twisted with disgust, her manicured finger trembling with fury. "You're not a father," she declared, her voice carrying to the back row where Tyler's colleagues sat. "You're a disaster." The gasp that swept through the room felt like a crashing wave. My face burned so intensely I thought I might collapse. Nancy dropped the pedals and ran back to her mother, likely believing she'd done something wrong. And then I heard it. Monica's laugh. Not nervous, not shocked, but genuinely amused, like she had been waiting for this moment. Tyler heard it too. He slowly turned from the altar and looked at her with an expression I had never seen before. "What's funny?" he asked quietly, but his voice echoed in the silence. No one spoke. Monica's smile disappeared quickly as she realized every eye was on her. Beverly lifted her chin as if she'd done nothing wrong, as if humiliating a father at his son's wedding was perfectly acceptable. That's when my son's expression hardened. I'd only seen that look a handful of times, once when he defended a smaller kid from a bully, and once when a contractor tried to cheat us. Tyler looked at me sitting there with petals in my hand, then at Beverly standing like she owned the room, then back at Monica. "This wedding is over," he said in a voice so calm it sent chills through everyone. "Everyone leaves." Gasps filled the room. A champagne glass shattered somewhere in the back, echoing like a gunshot. The musicians froze mid-note. Monica stared at him in shock, unable to speak. "Tyler, what are you doing?" she finally asked. He stepped away from the altar, away from her, away from the stunned officiant. "I asked you a question. What was funny about my father being humiliated?" "Nothing." Monica rushed out. "My mother was stressed. She didn't mean." But Beverly cut her off, stepping forward like royalty addressing her court. "Don't apologize for telling the truth. Your father needs to learn proper behavior for events like this." That was enough. Tyler looked out at the 200 stunned guests. His colleagues, Monica's friends, Beverly's associates, all dressed for a celebration that was falling apart. "There will be no wedding," he said loudly. "Not today, not ever." Chaos erupted. Monica shouted his name. Beverly screamed about ungrateful children. Glenn tried to pull her back. Guests stood, whispering, some already recording. Tyler walked straight to me, took my hand like he used to when he was a child afraid of storms, and said, "Come on, Dad. We're leaving." I don't remember walking out of that ballroom. I only remember every eye on me, the sound of heels striking marble, and Tyler's steady grip guiding me outside into the parking lot. The cool evening air hit my face sharply. Tyler didn't stop until we reached his car. He leaned against it, breathing hard. "Tyler," I said, touching his shoulder. He turned, and I saw something new in his eyes. Not just anger or heartbreak, but certainty. The kind that comes when illusions are shattered. "Dad," he said, "I need the truth right now. Has Beverly or Monica ever said anything about the house?" My stomach dropped. "Why are you asking?" He looked back at the glowing hotel. "Because this morning, I found documents in Monica's bag, and if they're real, this wasn't just about humiliation." He pulled out folded papers. They were planning to take the house. "Dad." After the wedding, I stared at them in disbelief. Before I could respond, a black car pulled up. Glenn stepped out holding an envelope, his hands trembling. "You need to see this," he said urgently before she stopped me. Glenn looked exhausted, disheveled, defeated. "This is proof," he said, opening it. Proof Beverly went too far. Inside were documents transferring ownership of my house into a trust controlled by Beverly and Monica. "I never signed this," I said. Glenn nodded. "Look at the signature." It looked close, but wrong. Someone had tried to copy it. Tyler read quickly, his jaw tightening. "This says you agreed to estate planning, but the trustees are Beverly and Monica." He looked at Glenn. "What's the truth?" Glenn collapsed onto the steps. "Beverly's business is failing. She's drowning in debt. She saw your house as a way out." My heart pounded. "A way out how?" "Your house is worth over $420,000. She planned to use it as collateral." The number hit me hard. Ruth and I had bought it for $85,000. Every dollar, every repair, every dream went into it, and she saw it as a transaction. Tyler's hands shook, and Monica knew. Glenn hesitated. She knew enough to help. Beverly convinced her it was smart planning, but she helped gather information. "What kind?" I asked. Glenn pulled more papers. "Monica copied your key. Beverly broke into your house 3 days ago. The world spun. She broke into my house. Glenn nodded, looking for documents to forge everything. I felt sick. That house was my life with Ruth, where she fought cancer, where she died holding my hand, and Beverly treated it like nothing. We need to go home now, I said. We drove in silence. When we arrived, something felt wrong. The porch light was on. I hadn't left it on. The back window was open. Inside, things felt off. My desk drawer was open. Empty. It's gone, I said. Tyler searched. Glenn stood frozen. What's missing? Ruth's insurance papers. The deed. My will. Everything. Then Tyler found a note. Monica's handwriting. If you had just known your place, none of this would have happened. I sat down, shaken. Tyler pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police, but then pounding hit the door. Beverly stood outside, furious, disheveled. Monica beside her. How dare you ruin everything? Beverly snapped. You broke into my house, Tyler said. She pushed inside. We were protecting assets. Glenn finally spoke. It's over, Beverly snapped at him. Go back. But Glenn stood firm. No, I'm done being afraid. He revealed her financial records. Debt, fraud, desperation. Monica stared at her mother. You lied. Sirens approached. The police arrived. Evidence was collected. Forged papers, stolen items, the note, the key, and in Beverly's car, they found my documents, and Ruth's jewelry box, the one with her wedding ring. My name was written in handwriting that looked close enough to mine to deceive a stranger, but not close enough to fool me. The C in Carl was too rounded. The F in Fisher leaned the wrong way. Someone had clearly practiced copying my signature, but they hadn't perfected it. Tyler scanned through the documents faster than I could, his jaw tightening more with every page. This says Dad agreed to estate planning for family security after I got married. But the trustees listed here are Beverly Grant and Monica Price. He snapped his gaze up at Glenn. What's the real story? Glenn sank heavily onto the hotel's stone steps, like his legs could no longer support him. Beverly's business is collapsing. It has been for over a year. She's drowning in debt, but she keeps spending to maintain the illusion of success. When Monica got engaged to you, Beverly saw an escape from the hole she created. My heart started pounding so loudly I could hear it echoing in my ears. A way out how? Your house sits on valuable property. Beverly had it appraised last month without telling anyone. It's worth at least $420,000, maybe more. She believed if she gained legal control through a family trust, she could use it as collateral for her failing business. The number struck me like a punch. Ruth and I bought that house for $85,000 in 1989. We poured every extra dollar into it, every weekend into repairs, every dream into making it a home. And to her, it was nothing but a number on paper. Tyler's hands were trembling now, and Monica knew. Glenn shut his eyes briefly before speaking again. Monica knew enough to help. Beverly convinced her it was smart estate planning, protecting your inheritance from taxes and legal risks. But Monica helped gather the information Beverly needed. What kind of information? I asked, even though part of me feared the answer. Glenn reached into his jacket and pulled out more documents. Beverly had Monica duplicate your house key last month, when she borrowed your jacket at that barbecue. Beverly used it to enter your house 3 days ago while you were at your doctor's appointment. The world tilted beneath me. I grabbed Tyler's arm to steady myself. She broke into my house, I whispered. Glenn nodded with regret. She was searching for documents to help forge the transfer papers. Your will, insurance policies, anything to make the fake trust appear legitimate. I felt nauseated. That house wasn't just property. It was every memory Ruth and I built together. It was where she fought cancer for 2 years, where she died holding my hand in the bedroom we shared for 3 decades. And that woman walked through it like she was browsing a store. We need to go home right now, I said. We drove in silence, Glenn following behind us. The neighborhood looked calm in the evening light. Porch lights flickered on. Kids rode bikes before dinner. Mrs. Cooper watered her roses across the street like she always did. But the moment we pulled into my driveway, I knew something was wrong. The porch light was on. I had turned it off before leaving for the wedding. Tyler noticed too. Dad, did you leave that light on? No. The front door was still locked, but when Tyler checked the back, we found the kitchen window slightly open. I never left windows open when I wasn't home. Old habits from decades of construction work taught me to secure everything. Inside, the house felt off. Not obviously disturbed, but wrong. Like someone had entered my space and shifted things just enough to notice. In my study, I went straight to the desk where I kept important papers. The bottom drawer was slightly open. I pulled it out completely, empty. "It's not here," I said, my voice barely sounding like my own. Tyler checked the other drawers while Glenn lingered in the doorway, looking ashamed. "What's missing, Dad?" "The folder with Ruth's insurance documents, the house deed, my will, everything Beverly needed to make her forgeries convincing." That's when Tyler noticed something else. A folded note placed under the desk lamp, positioned so I would find it. He picked it up and read it, his face draining of color. "What does it say?" I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know. He handed it to me. The handwriting was Monica's. I had seen it on thank you cards and wedding notes for months. "If you had just known your place, none of this would have gotten messy." I sank heavily into my chair. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was a threat, a promise that worse would follow if I stayed silent and let them take everything. Tyler pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police," but before he could dial, someone began pounding on the front door so violently the whole house shook. Through the window, Beverly's silver dress reflected the porch light. Tyler looked at me, then at Glenn. "Stay behind me," he told us firmly. He opened the door just enough to look out. Beverly stood there, still in her wedding outfit. But now she looked like a woman unraveling from her own chaos. Her makeup was smeared, her perfect hair falling apart, and her eyes wild like a trapped animal. Monica stood beside her, still in that wedding dress that now looked like a costume from a ruined performance. "How dare you ruin everything?" Beverly snapped at Tyler. "Do you have any idea what you've cost us?" "Cost you?" Tyler echoed. "You broke into my father's house." Beverly shoved past him into my home without permission. "We were protecting family assets, something your generation doesn't understand." Glenn finally found his voice. "Beverly, stop. It's over." She turned on him sharply. "Go back to the car, Glenn. You've caused enough damage." But Glenn stepped forward into my home and said something I never expected to hear. "No." That single word stunned everyone, even him. "No," he repeated, stronger this time. "I'm done being afraid of you, Beverly. I'm done pretending your behavior is acceptable." He reached into his jacket and pulled out another envelope. "These are copies of Beverly's actual financial records. Her business has been failing for 2 years. She owes $340,000 to creditors. Her license is under investigation for fraud. She planned to use Carl's property as collateral to escape bankruptcy." Monica stared at her mother like she didn't recognize her. "Mom, you told me this was just estate planning." Beverly grabbed her arm tightly. "Don't listen to him. He's always been weak, always jealous of success." But Monica pulled away. "You lied to me. You made me help you steal from Tyler's father." That's when the sirens pierced the air. Mrs. Cooper had called the police after seeing the commotion. 2 patrol cars pulled up, their flashing lights painting my quiet street in chaos. Beverly tried to leave, but an officer stopped her. "Ma'am, stay where you are." The next hour blurred into statements and evidence. Officers documented everything. The forged documents, the stolen files, Monica's threatening note, the copied key Glenn found in Beverly's purse. When they searched her car, they recovered my original documents, and something else that broke me, Ruth's jewelry box from her dresser. I hadn't even noticed it was gone. She had kept her wedding ring in that box after cancer made her fingers too thin. Beverly had taken it like it meant nothing. The officers arrested Beverly for breaking and entering, document fraud, and theft. Monica wasn't taken into custody that night, but they made it clear charges were coming for her role. As the police cars drove away with Beverly in the back seat, Glenn stood in my yard, looking like he had aged a decade in a single evening. "I should have stopped her years ago," he said quietly. I looked at him, a man who had spent 30 years afraid of his own wife. "We both made mistakes," I told him, "but we don't have to keep making them." He nodded slowly and walked to his car. Before leaving, he said, "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow." Tyler and I went back inside our home, the house Ruth and I built, the house where I raised my son, the house no one would ever take from us again. That night we changed every lock together in my workshop, just like we used to when he was learning how to use tools as a boy. 6 months later, Beverly was convicted on multiple fraud charges and lost her business license. Monica cooperated with authorities and received probation, but she moved back to her hometown, and Tyler never spoke to her again. As for me, I learned the most important lesson of my life. Silence isn't golden when it allows people to destroy what matters most. Sometimes protecting your family means raising your voice, even when it's uncomfortable. I still live in the same house Ruth and I built together, and every Sunday, Tyler comes over for dinner, just like always. We don't talk much about that wedding, but we both remember what it taught us. Family isn't about staying quiet, it's about standing up for each other when it truly matters. I learned that sometimes the people who smile the sweetest are the ones planning the deepest betrayal, and the only way to stop them is to refuse to stay silent when they expect you to disappear. Respect isn't earned by shrinking yourself to keep the peace. It's claimed by standing your ground and never apologizing for the life you built with your own hands. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to A Father's Wrath for more powerful stories of betrayal, justice, and standing your ground.